coming quickly, and as time is running shy, I pray that we would just live in a place of peace, but at the same time with an urgency. I pray blessings over the deliberations today as we look at these bills. I pray that we would make wise choices and move forward the bills that are the best for the state of Wyoming. We thank you and praise you now in Jesus' name, amen.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. Ladies and gentlemen, we do have a bill that we're working on, but before we get started on that, the committee is going to have a discussion in the public. Yeah, we'll get to it. Thank you. I just want everybody in the room to know we're going to start with a discussion about next week's meetings, and then we'll get to the first bill that we were continuing. And then if time is available, we'll get to Senate File 148. Ms. Childress, would you please take the roll?
Representative Alaman? Present. Representative Angelos?
Here.
Representative Haraldson?
Here.
Representative Pendergraft?
Excused.
Representative Sherwood?
Excused.
Representative Smith?
Here.
Chairman Bear?
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Okay, each of you have an email that you received from Mr. Richards. And we have got an opportunity next week to meet with some of the agencies while we're still in town, and I'd like to take advantage of that. We're all fairly new as appropriators, and the more time we have with the agencies, the better, I believe. So I'd like to make some decisions here as far as who we should invite for next week. So just open it up to discussion about these suggestions made by Mr. Richards. Representative Haraldson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So are you just looking for us to be like, hey, these are the three we think?
Yes.
Okay. I would say right out of the gate, I'd like to see Department of Health brought in. I'd like to see and let me ask this question. Could we bring university and community colleges together as one? Because I believe it kind of encompasses.
We could have one meeting, 2-hour meeting, and both of them.
That's what I'm thinking. And then State Forester for our third.
Okay. Anyone else? Representative Angelos.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would agree with that. I would say let's bring in Department of Health, the college, and University of Wyoming Community Colleges, and definitely State Forester.
Representative Alaman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Those also would be my picks. Thank
You
you.
guys are so easy. Representative Smith.
Yeah.
I concur, and I would maybe also like to bring in the Department of Corrections.
Well, now we're getting the whole list. Okay. All right, I'll make arrangements with those agencies, and we'll set up a meeting on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Thursday's our last day here. I think we'll be pretty busy with concurrences, that type of thing. We'll just lay off on having a meeting. We'll keep to our same schedule. Monday will be a noon meeting, Tuesday will be a morning meeting, Wednesday will be a noon meeting. And that'll be it for the session. Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Childress?
you do have the interim topics Monday at noon.
Right. All right, so let's do Monday. Do you want to do upon adjournment, or do you want to do morning? Monday morning. Okay, thank you for that reminder. Okay. And Ms. Childress, hopefully you got all that, so you can keep me on track. Okay. All right, let's get back on to capital construction, school finance, routine and major maintenance calculations. We were getting ready.
Roll call? We already did.
It's all right. I need lots of reminders, so it's okay. I'm happy with the reminders. All right, Director McComey, please. Okay, we were pretty rushed at getting your description of the bill. Is there anything else you'd like to add to yesterday's conversation?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dell McComey, Director for the State Construction Department. No, sir, there isn't.
Okay. And now we're ready to start opening it up to comments. Do I have anyone here from other agencies that would like to opine on this? All right, seeing none, let's move on to electeds. Do we have anyone here? Representative Larson or Senator Crago? Okay, all right. Anyone from the public? And Ms. Childress, do we have anyone online? Please come forward, sir. Thank you for being here, both of you gentlemen. Welcome to House Appropriations. We're discussing Senate File 34. Sir, please introduce yourself and let us know your thoughts on Senate File 34.
Mr. Chair, I'm members of the committee. I'm Dave Bartlett, Associate Superintendent for Campbell County School District. I would just like to speak in favor of this bill. In general, with districts, when we look at the total major maintenance square footage calculation, because it's tied to ADM, there is an ebb and flow there. When we have declining enrollment, obviously we're not able to fully take care of our facilities. With the increase from 115% to 135% in Campbell County, we're currently just under 500,000 square feet excess. 100,000 of that being Campbell County High School. As we address facilities, we do try to right-size them, but again, until the building is at end of life, you're kind of straddled with that square footage. This calculation would help us cover approximately an additional 175,000 square feet, allows us to take care of some major components. Because we're not fully funded, you're always going to have projects that you can't get to. So really, we do choose to try and do the worst first, but you're always kind of stuck with kind of pushing things off to future budgets. Mr. Chair, to your comments yesterday, it would be great to have major maintenance fully funded at 100%. I would love to see the ADM calculation pulled out of that, because whether I'm full or I'm in declining enrollment, I still have a building to maintain. And we really would like to make sure the buildings we have are kept in top shape for our students and our staff. So, thank you.
Assistant Superintendent Bartlett, could you just opine on your comment about not being fully funded? Is it in association with the ADM calculation, or in your mind, why do you say it's not fully funded as far as maintenance is concerned?
So, Mr. Chair, as I said, with the excess square footage, we are funded for 115% of our square footage. When I have beyond that, we're not funded for that additional. So we do have to take from the general fund or other areas to maintain that. And then additionally, with the ADM, as our student enrollment rises and falls, that is part of the calculation of how we're funded. So both of those will impact us.
So when you say you're not fully funded based on the square footage, what square footage is outside of that 500,000 that you have that's in a calculation of 115% times, I think we're at 2% right now?
Mr. Chair, I don't know if
I'm trying to understand your comment of not fully funded, if you could. Please, Mr. McComey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So based on ADM, we look at the student population, we look at the building size and the configuration as far as the number of rooms, those sort of things, and that drives then how many allowable square footage that is paid for under the major maintenance. There's about 4 or 5 districts that are at 100%. But as Mr. Bartlett stated, in their district, they have a lot of excess square footage. So that 100% is what we drive out in our calculator model that is eligible for major maintenance. Then the 15% goes on top of that to then cut that off. So this bill would raise that from 15 to 135. That's where the extra square footage would come from.
Right, so this, if I'm hearing it right, it's the ADM pull in where you don't have enough ADM to get the full 100% to begin with, is where you're in trouble. So, and that's your comment, leads to your comment, you'd rather the ADM calculation not be a part of it. I understand and hear that clearly. So, when you have an ADM situation like this, our Mercer reports also talk about, how to combine schools and things like that. Have you had any opportunities at Campbell County school district to combine and mothball any buildings or anything like that?
Mr. Chair, so my time in the district obviously has been limited to the past 18 months. I don't have the full history there. I can tell you we do have one replacement elementary, Hillcrest Elementary, and we do have the older facility has been mothballed. In terms of our secondary schools, what I would tell you is, there are good types of excess square footage and there are bad types. If I have excess square footage in classrooms, we can move programs around, we can move students in, and we can take advantage of that. When we look at the excess square footage at Campbell County High School, for instance, a good share of that is oversized hallways, it's connectors, it's things that we've done as we've done additions there. And so there's not really opportunity to move students or to recoup or take advantage of that square footage. It's just there that we have to maintain it.
And Mr. Bartlett, you said that Campbell County is about 20%, that Campbell County High School is about 20% of your total square footage, is that right?
It's about 15%, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Any questions for Assistant Superintendent Bartlett? All right. Thank you very much for being here. We appreciate your comments. All right, Dr. Boyd Brown.
Mr. Chairman, Boyd Brown, Executive Director of the Wyoming Association of School Administrators. Want to echo a lot of what both Mr. McComey and Mr. Bartlett have said. I think that this bill gets us a ways down the road with the 135% over 115%, so we have less deferred maintenance out there. But again, I would agree with kind of where you were at. If we don't take care of that 100% of the square footage, at some point we're deferring maintenance down the road. Again, I've been in the largest and the smallest district in the state. Much easier in some of our smaller districts, unless you have a really big building and fewer students. But in our larger districts, I can say that as a superintendent in Campbell County, when I was there, we had over 9,400 students, and I think that there are 1,000 students less than that right now. And with where we might be with energy, they may be back up that 1,000 students very quickly. So you have to deal with that. And being the superintendent in Laramie 1, there are a lot of buildings here that are very old. I think the 8 that they're looking at taking offline here are an average of somewhere around 60 years old. Some of them are 80 years old. So I think trying to right size and be able to go through all of that and get the major maintenance and the routine maintenance right is difficult. We have the square footage that we have, and we have to take care of it as long as we have those buildings. And then as we replace those old buildings, we try to right size them. And with that, I'd answer questions.
Questions for Dr. Brown? Dr. Brown, I think you're probably aware of what happened in Senate Appropriations yesterday with Campbell County High School. You just mentioned, the 1,000 fewer students than when you were there. We know that the new building will be considerably smaller than the current building. You're very familiar with the current building. Can you tell me your thoughts on downsizing that school and the potential of Campbell County to boom and bust? What are your thoughts on what you saw yesterday?
And I'm going to give you my opinion on that, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the question. I believe that they had the opportunity to look at the studies that they've done on growth. Again, they've been declining enrollment, but again, it just kind of depends on where we're at with the energy sector. Oil, gas, coal, coal's king in Campbell County. They may be up that 1,000 students very quickly. I know that working with the school facilities department, they want us to design those buildings so that they're expandable if we need to add on. So I think that there's the opportunity to make sure that if we do grow up in Campbell County, we could add on to that building. So again, I think that that's all in the planning. I think the planning that they've done with the Rock Springs building, where they've built it and they're going to expand it into the full high school, was very appropriate. And I think that knowing the leadership in Campbell County, they'll want to be able to do that as well.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions for Dr. Brown? Well, thank you very much for being here, Dr. Brown. Appreciate your input. Took me a little while to get my brain working, Director McComey. I had asked you some questions right at the end, and I want to revisit those. So how did we get to this place where we're doing a multiplier applied to a percentage? And is it necessary to do all that, or can we simplify it down to one number without creating some unintended consequences?
Mr. Chairman, I believe that you're going to have some multipliers in here simply because of what we call the CRV value, the cost of replacement value, and the let me go back to a little bit of history.
Please.
On the 115, 135, et cetera. So years ago, when the Campbell lawsuits first came about, and prior to even the department, the commission, those sort of things, they were looking at, they knew these schools, a number of them had a lot of students, and based on, or a lot of excess square footage, and based on the bus boom cycle that we see in Wyoming, you see these sine curves that show up from time to time. And so they were actually at 200% was the calculator number in there. So they looked at total square footage and then 200%. And they reduced that over time down to 155, then they went down to 135, down to the 115 where we're at now. Now, part of the emphasis behind that was to encourage the school districts to mothball, jettison, get rid of, close down these excess square footage to try and consolidate so that the state wasn't paying for a lot of empty classrooms. And so that's kind of the history of how it's came about to where it's at today. Now, when we talked about this in the select committee this summer, this was an interim study. When we talked about it, one of the things, we've done some studies also prior to this that talked about where we should be. So the way we calculate this is really kind of a national standard out there. However, the full square footage on the state buildings, we use the same formula, but we don't say how many people are in the building from time to time, how many people, we're paying for what the building square footage is because we got to maintain the whole building. So one of the things that I talked to the committee about is when we build a new building, we don't want that new building full the day it opens. We want to have some room for growth. So we're trying to calculate what the projected projection of student population would be when that school is built to 90% of. So we open a brand new school, we do it deliberately as the state at 90%, and yet we only fund then 90% of the building square footage for the ADM because that's what we're looking at, the number of students in there. To me, we should be funding it at the square foot area of the building. When the discussion happened with the 115, that was a discussion with the committee was going to 2.5%, which we have previous studies on. That's what it should be. Again, national standards. It's been studied for a number of years. And then the full square footage. Honestly, when I brought that up, to some degree, how do I rectify this excess square footage and having the school districts consolidate down to right size if there isn't an incentive for them to do it? But I think in the long run, just paying for the square footage of the building and keeping in mind there is excess square footage that we call enhancements that the districts add on above and beyond the program the state provides for. Those, I think, should still be the responsibility of the district. But within what we say should be funded to house that building, I personally feel that we should be at 100%. The discussion in the select committee was, well, is that constitutional to be able to do that? Had you looked at, are people going to lose money or whatever? We had not in that particular meeting. We went back and asked our attorneys about it. They said as long as none of the school districts were losing any money, and in fact they wouldn't, we determined they wouldn't after that meeting, that it would be appropriate that we could go to that. But this bill was already moving forward with the increase in the 135 and the 2.5% multiplier. And again, I understand the reasoning behind going from 200 on down and trying to get the districts to right size the number of buildings they have. I will say there's a lot of other pressures on the district beyond just the building major maintenance. The routine maintenance is in those same calculations. Their block grant, the number of students that they have, principals, all that thing kind of drives the districts, in my opinion, to some degree to right-size themselves anyway, just beyond the building itself.
Questions for Director McComey? Director, you just mentioned the routine maintenance, and this is major maintenance here. Well, I guess we do routine and major maintenance, so we're capturing all of that in this bill.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Chairman, just a
Representative Harrelson.
question on that, because that brings up another conversation. As we talk about major maintenance, that's building of new schools even, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, so we're talking about building new structures and doing that maintenance side of it. Now, let me ask this question. Obviously, I think we're talking two completely different scopes. One, like maintenance, that routine maintenance should be 100% of square footage, because you're having to maintain 100% of square footage, right? That's at least how my brain works on it. But on major maintenance, as we're looking at in Campbell's case, we're taking a school much larger and shrinking it to a much smaller school. So maybe it's almost even a situation where this needs to be two conversations, separate conversations, as we see that ebb and flow in the ADM. I don't know, can you speak to that? As maybe we've got two different scenarios here that need to be addressed in two different ways.
Director McComey?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The original interim study that I asked for did not include routine maintenance. I was just asking for looking at the major maintenance part of it, because I don't deal with the routine maintenance. During the discussion, however, it came up that there is the calculation of the 115%. So there's a different calculator, not the 2% or the 2.5% on routine maintenance. That's for major maintenance. Within the block grant, there's a calculation for routine maintenance, and that 115% is in that calculation. So by increasing that, which this bill would do, to 135%, then the districts would see additional funding, and I believe the fiscal note that was offered by WDE was like $5 million for that. That change would allow $5 million more in the block grant.
Right.
And I don't know if somebody from WDE's here or not. I don't want to misspeak on that, but if I'm wrong, certainly clarify that
Does
for me.
anybody want to comment from WD? Okay. All right. Seeing none, thank you, Director McComb.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here. Is there any further comments on Senate File 34? All right, seeing none, we'll close public comment. Committee, what's your pleasure? Move to pass by Harrelson, seconded by Alaman. All right, we'll work the bill. Page 1. Page 2. Page 3. Page 4. Page 5. Page 6. Discussion on the bill? Seeing none, Ms. Childress, please take the roll.
Roll call vote, Senate File 34 do pass. Representative Allemand? Aye. Representative Angelos? Aye. Representative Harrelson?
Aye.
Representative Pendergraft?
Aye.
Representative Sherwood voted aye via absentee. Representative Smith?
No.
Chairman Bear?
No.
Mr. Chairman, 5 aye, 2 no.
That will pass, and let's see, this was from School Finance. Mr. Vice Chair, will you please talk to someone on that committee that, let's see, this was facilities, that was chaired by Landon Brown.
Yeah.
Representative Brown, if you could talk to Representative Brown about that bill, we'll get that represented. All right, Senate File 148. Senator Crago, welcome. Welcome to House Appropriations.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good to be here. Barry Crago, Senate District 22. Pleasure to be here and present Senate File 148 this morning. I know you've heard a lot about this particular issue. I'll just run over a little bit of the background, why I brought the bill. As you know, this last summer was one of the worst if not the worst wildfire season we've seen in the state. Total acres burned, including federal lands, 850,000 acres, private and state, just a shade under 600,000, and almost every person in this room, all the legislators and committee members up here were, people in your districts were affected greatly by this. Campbell County, 120,000 private and state acres. Sheridan County, 205,000 acres. Johnson County, 176, almost 177,000 private acres. Laramie County, which we didn't really know, it didn't make the news as much, 25,000 acres. Platte County, 33,000 acres. And so just a lot of damage, a lot of destruction, a lot of infrastructure, not only, grass and hayland, but a lot of infrastructure. This bill doesn't really go after the infrastructure problem. There's one little piece in the bill when I walk through it that we'll get to that has to do with public property, but not private property. Obviously, the state had to spend a great deal of money fighting these fires, and so this bill tries to help out with that a little bit. And just, obviously, the attempt is to get some funding out there to address the problems created by the wildfires this last season. I filed this bill originally, knowing that there was money in the budget, but I filed this as a backup. And as it turns out, maybe wasn't the worst plan in the world. And so I'm just like to keep the idea moving forward. This bill, as originally filed, and I don't know if you have both copies, the original and the engrossed version, but as originally filed, the bill had a committee set up to decide where and how to spend the grant money. The Senate reduced that, or essentially took that out, repealed that portion of the bill that I had put in, and decided to replace it and just send the money directly to the WWNRT, let Director Budd and his folks figure out the best place and the most efficient way to get that money out. And again, I'll walk through all the different things that the bill does, and just stop me, Mr. Chairman, at any point if you have the questions as we're walking through it. So turning to page 2, you can see that we appropriated money from the general fund, $1 million for the special contingency for the governor's office, and that was money that was spent this last season, so just replenishing that dollar amount of $1 million. Below that, on lines 11 and 12, 13, 14, 1.2 million to Homeland Security Division. Also the disaster contingency money, refilling that. Below that, $30 million to fire suppression. Below that, there's appropriated $20 million from LISRA to refill LISRA, to LISRA to refill the money that we had borrowed, that the governor had borrowed for the fires, in accordance with what we had done in the budget last year. We had given him borrowing authority. This is just putting that money back that we had borrowed. Then
Senator Craig, you do, I believe, on page 6, you do take care of the extended borrowing authority as well, right?
Yes, sir.
And
Yep.
you went to 40 million, is that right?
Mr. Chairman, I had originally put that at 30, and one of our good senators down the hall changed that number to 40, both in this bill and in Senate File 152. And so that's how the same senator thought that we should just up that borrowing authority and make sure there's plenty of ability for the governor to use it. I don't think that was a bad idea based on our winter. We haven't had a whole lot of moisture and it's not looking great. We may be in the same boat again. I'm hoping we're not, but I think we should be prepared, whatever the case. But yes, Mr. Chairman, that's correct.
Please proceed.
So then moving on, and this is really, I guess this is where this bill's a little bit different than anything that's left hanging out there. There's a $100 million appropriation, and I've talked to several of you about that. That was just the number that came from the, from the governor's recommendation. And so
Senator Craig, wasn't his recommendation 130 million?
it was, yep. It's a little bit less, but I'll get into that. He also had another appropriation request for some money to go to public infrastructure repair or restoration, and that's on the next page, but I'll get to that in just a second. So this $100 million, as you can see, The difference is I narrowed the scope of what it can be used for. And so the original budget request was much broader than this. This would just be for the purpose of restoring grass and vegetation destroyed by wildfires. Really what we're talking about is treating invasive species. I mean, I think that's what we're all worried about in our neck of the woods, where all the fires were, is making sure that we don't have a complete disaster from ventonata, cheatgrass, medusa head, all those things that are very prevalent up in our part of the state. We don't want them spreading. We don't need them going places they haven't been, and this is the conditions, and I think we'll hear from some of the folks behind me. Conditions will be very, the weeds will love it if we're not there to take care of it. The conditions will be in their favor, and so we just need to make sure we have some ability to take care of that. Moving on, Mr. Chairman, on page 4, the $10 million for projects to restore watershed health and infrastructure. I know there's going to be some work that has to be done outside of Sheridan on the water intake up there due to the wildfires. That's just one example. I'm sure there's a couple others that will probably pop up. That's what this money was for, was to make sure we could take care of that and help with that particular problem. Going down is just the process, and I think you can ask the director how he typically handles this, but subsection D there, starting on line 9, that's how these grants would be handled. And he can explain exactly how that works, but he's an expert at this, and he finds a way to turn our money into a lot more money, and gets a lot of help from additional outside sources, private, et cetera, sometimes federal.
Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Craigo, thank you. Real quick, before we get off of page 4, on lines 2 and 3, page 4, lost public infrastructure. Can you kind of just touch on that? I mean, is there something you're have in mind? Is there a need that we're seeing? Obviously, we're this far into it. I think probably a lot of the infrastructure's already been replaced. I just was kind of wanting to get your heart on that.
Senator Craigo.
Mr. Chairman, Representative, so yeah, that was the example I was referencing. So Representative Pendergraft and I know a little bit about this, but there was some of the water intake infrastructure, they're worried about what we may have to do to protect that just outside of Sheridan. And so their water comes from where one of the big fires occurred. And so I just want to make sure that if there is the need, that there's some funding there to help them with their water supply. That's just the one I know about. I'm not sure it's going to cost $10 million. That was just one of the things that was in the governor's budget that I copied over to this bill.
Follow-up, Representative Harrelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So that's under the $100 million.
Senator, yeah, Senator Craigo.
Mr. Chairman, if we need to clean that up, my intent was just for the 10 million.
Okay, Senator Craigo, please proceed.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So moving on, to page 5, again, this is just the continued process that the director would use all the way through page 6. And then we get into section 2 on page 6. That's essentially the balancer, section 2, moving money from LISRA to the general fund to cover the costs within this. And that's standard language according to our budget folks that we just have to do. Based on what has happened in the last couple of days, I'm not even sure that is going to be necessary, but I think you leave it in there in case. Section 3 is the borrowing authority, and that, Mr. Chairman, as you pointed out earlier, is the $40 million borrowing authority. Again, like as I mentioned, originally it was 30, it got amended up to 40. Section 4, which is actually is becoming less important by the day, but section 4, when we first started this, there was concern, rightfully so, which bills control. This is sort of the order of operations and controlling language. So if either HB1, SF1, or SF 152 pass, this bill essentially is at the bottom of the list. So if any of them have these additional funds allocated or appropriated, these dollar amounts are reduced by that. And so that's a lot, that's page 7, the rest of page 7, page 8, page 9, all the way to the top of page 10. That's what all of that additional language is for, to just make sure we're not duplicating resources or appropriations, and that this bill is literally at the bottom of the poll as far as deciding how the money gets spent. The repealer, Section 5, that's repealing the borrowing authority within the budget bill from last year, because we're replacing that language within this bill. And then, obviously, Mr. Chairman, Section 6 is the effective dates. Happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chairman.
All right, questions for the bringer? Seeing none, thank you for presenting. I do have a question before you step away. Back to Representative Harrelson's question on the public infrastructure by public. I'm assuming we're talking about state property here, so would that include state fencing?
Mr. Chairman, that was not my intent. I mean, I think this committee could decide that, or your chamber could decide that. Really, my biggest focus is the restoration of the landscape, i.e. invasive species. There may also be some reseeding necessary in some places. I think that was also intended to be captured by this bill. I was not thinking about fencing. Someone behind me may have a different opinion, but that was not our intent, and that was never actually our discussion. Our whole discussion on this bill the whole time, as it moved through the process on the other end, on our end, was let's make sure we have the money there to take care of the weeds and invasive species. That was really the intent, not necessarily infrastructure. And that I think Representative Harrelson caught something, there that we weren't really intending. So.
Okay. All right, thank you. Director Budd, welcome to House Appropriations again. Appreciate your being here today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, let's have you go ahead and address this bill, but I'm not sure if you're aware of it or not, but we had an amendment to Senate File 152 last night, and that was done very hastily, so I don't know if you had a chance to review that or not. I'd like you to kind of opine on your interaction with that amendment last night as well.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, and thank you and other members for your efforts yesterday to keep that intact. I'm here because I do support this bill because it's clean. Given some of the activity that's taken place in the last few days, 152 would have to go back to conference. You have a clean bill here that I think we can protect the intent of trying to take care of folks who have had devastating fire impacts. So certainly in support of the bill. Primarily, Mr. Chairman, my intent, if you so desire, is to explain how we would actually do this in the field, because I think there's a lot of confusion about that. And so if you want, I'd proceed with that.
Please.
The way that we would operate, should this bill become law, is I will send a request for proposals out to all of the counties that are primarily impacted here. And say that would be to their weed and pest district, conservation districts, game and fish, because they do backfill administration in some counties. Crook County is one of those that has limited ability to provide that administration. And also to the fire districts in those counties to say, here, send us your proposals for what needs to be treated. We know that they've gone out and mapped those areas. Basically, they've done a red light, green light, yellow light program, to which is the highest priority. We calculated the amounts based on the total acreage of fires and estimations of 25 and 50% that would potentially need to be treated. These are way lower than what those total figures come up, but this is probably all we could do in the coming year. And not trying to take off more than we have helicopter time, more than we have chemical availability, more than we have manpower to do. So I think the 100 million across the board would be the top end of what we can actually get done. Once we get those, then we would go through the normal process that we do with grants. We would vet those for permitting. Do they have their permitting done? Do they have matching funds? Do they have skin in the game? What all do they bring to the table to get this done on the ground, and how soon can they get it done? That's a standard that we do with every project that we get. We would use that same process. Obviously, I would consult with the counties. That's a primary partner in this, but also with the Department of Agriculture, Game and Fish, and others who have skin in the game or who have the opportunity to help aid with this particular effort. Above and beyond that, then we would issue contracts, the same as we do with others. Those are binding contracts that are done by the Attorney General that would go out to those partner entities that delineate what their responsibilities are. And then once those projects are completed, we would pay for them. There would be no payments under this because constitutionally it's prohibited to any individual property owner. That is not how we operate. We operate on a landscape scale. One thought that I've had is that probably I would go in each area and say, specifically to the house draw fire, what do you expect the need will be? Specific to Pleasant Valley fire, what would that be? So that we're actually focusing in on the fire perimeter and what would need to be done there. I think that gives us a finer scale of analysis. And then, as you can see in here, we certainly would expect to report back to you and the TRW committees with what has been done and what may need to be done in the future. It's a pretty, we've done it 20 years. We have a pretty good process. I think it's very fair. I think it's very thorough. And I think it's also very conservative in the way that we approach the state's allocation of funds. Finally, Mr. Chairman, the original 130 did contemplate doing fence repair and those types of things. That reduction to 100 took out 30, which was the estimate for the fence and infrastructure portion of that. We do not contemplate that as a part of this bill. Relative to your question about state fences, in talking with the director of the YDOT, they believe they have funding that, from federal funding, that will handle the fences that they have, the right-of-way fences, and that they did not need to be included in here. And I think that state lands has funding that they can look at for fencing. In additionally, I think the amendment that you had on the bill on Senate File 152 would allow them to borrow if that became an issue. That's where we would direct fencing and infrastructure. Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, questions for the director? All right, seeing none, thank you for being here. Thank you for that explanation. We appreciate that.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Any legislators that would like to opine on this? Please. Representative Larson, welcome to House Appropriations.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Lloyd Larson from House District 54, and just a little more history on what we contemplated when we drafted this bill. That this came on the tail end this fall of what the fire's done versus what the, and in contemplation with what the governor put in his supplemental request. And the conversation we had as we drafted this bill is what's the role of the state in reaching out in response to the impact of those fires. And we felt that there really did need to be a nexus on the benefit to the state where we're using these type of funds, rather than to stay in line with the Constitution that the WWNRT has established over the years. And so that's why you don't see the loans that was in the governor's supplemental request in the 130. And that's why we avoided replacing private infrastructure. I'll call it the fencing, private irrigation issues, which we don't argue are an impact. But there's a real nexus as we talk about invasive species on all lands. If we spray them on private lands, there's a benefit to the state, as we all know and understand. Same with restorations. And so we think that there's a benefit to the private landowner if we provide that invasive species mitigation as well as land restoration, that then would give them more ability to apply for other programs or privately be able to take care of their private infrastructure. I think One of the other reasons we contemplated being totally grants on this first year is looking at the partners that WWNRT reaches out and uses to get things done, and so our local weed and pest districts wouldn't have to apply for a loan. This grant would get these monies out and get boots on the ground to get stuff done. If you would go to page 4 to Representative Harrelson, Mr. Chairman, Representative Harrelson's comment on lines 2 on restoring lost public infrastructure on that 100 million. That really that's a good catch, and I would recommend that restoring lost public infrastructure would be moved down to line 5 after 4, to where that would be $10 million for restoring lost public infrastructure and to restore watershed and health infrastructure. The reason we had contemplated, or I had contemplated public infrastructure, I wasn't completely sure what all infrastructure in addition to watershed and water had been impacted by those fires, and we wanted our municipalities to have access to getting that mitigation. So that would be my suggestion. And Mr. Chairman, with that explanation, I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Okay, questions for Representative Lloyd? Representative Lloyd, I got a question for you. You know, we've had quite a debate on the floor about grants, loans, you know, invasive species is what we really wanted the grants to go for through weed and pest, so that we could mitigate that. With the Senate killing the budget, there was $11 million in there for weed and pest directly for that issue. So we've lost that. Last night, our amendment, or actually Representative Harrelson's amendment, basically restored that plus what we had in the budget in our final negotiations on third reading, with about, you know, there's the 11 million that we were sending to weed and pest plus the 40 million that we had in grants in the House version of the bill. I just like your thoughts on what is the right number. I know we really don't even know what the outcome is going to be from fire. You know, that is a weed control methodology, but we also know that in Representative Harrelson's neck of the woods, there's so much of this cheatgrass that even fire that they had is probably not gonna solve the problem. So just like you to opine about, you know, where should we fall as we're contemplating previous to the expenditure of these funds, what is the right number?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to opine on that. I'd go back and ask for clarification, but I believe the 11 million that was in the supplemental budget was the second portion of the $22 million that was limited to invasive grasses only. Yes. Mm-hmm. And so that had a little limitation, but it certainly would have helped. So with that gone. So when we put this together in the conversation with Director Bud, the question was, what's this going to take? And I don't know that we fully understand, to your point, to the full extent, what that will be over a couple of 3 years. But what can we get out the door this year and effectively, positively impact this whole effort is the number that we come up with. It was the 100 million. That's why we come up with the 100 million, is for the same question you're asking of me. And so that's where we ended up. Can we get the 49 or 70 out the door? Yeah, absolutely. But I think even more importantly is this committee, with the help of Director Bud, is going to have to come back next year with a revised number to say, okay, we're here. Now we have a better and a clearer understanding of all the impacts, and it's going to take an additional X. And I don't see how we ever anticipate that whether it's 100 million or 70 million this year, to think that that's going to take care of it. I just wishful thinking, but I just don't think that's
You foresee
accurate.
it being more expensive in future appropriations. All right, well, thank you. Appreciate that. All right, we appreciate you being here. All right, open to the public. Anyone want to comment on Senate File 30-something? No, 148, sorry, 148. Please come forward. And Mr. Childress, we have no one online, correct? Okay. Welcome to House Appropriations. We appreciate you being here. Please introduce yourself and tell us your thoughts on Senate File 148.
Chairman Bear, members of the committee, Era Arano, Rocky Mountain Farmers Union, and we are in support of this. We think it's important for these fire funds to be restored, as all do, and our members are very concerned about the invasive grasses, not only in the impacted areas, but throughout the state. We recognize the nuances of many of the other things moving forward and support as much getting to the places where we have those final decisions as possible. Important issue for us. Thank you for considering it. We support this. Thank you.
Any questions from Ms. Moreno? Seeing none, thank you very much for being here. We appreciate your input. Yes, please. Welcome to House Appropriations. We appreciate you being here. Please introduce yourself and tell us your thoughts.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Monica Leininger, speaking on behalf of the Nature Conservancy. I just want to talk about the importance of these funds and bring us back to why is this needed. So when a fire takes place, you take out a lot of the other native vegetation that could compete with invasive annual grasses, and it really makes that ideal seed bed for invasive grasses to take hold. And particularly with Wyoming's wind conditions, seeds can, spread across the air and really take hold quickly. Our organization has done a lot of work on invasive annual grasses. We've worked on post-fire areas and tested different application techniques for indaziflam and other chemicals that could fight invasives. And so we just want to really encourage the committee to support these funds. It's one of the most critical issues we see for Wyoming's landscapes and wildlife and productivity of our agricultural land. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Questions for Mrs. Langer?
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Harrelson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So a question, it's more just something that popped in my brain, and I've wondered this number, and I haven't had this number. Maybe you have this number, but in an area where we see cheatgrass overcome an acreage of land, what are we looking at for, and maybe I'm going to ask you a question you won't have a clue on, but what's our grazing numbers for those acres? Does someone have that? Where so we can run X number of cow-calf pairs, but if they turn around and we go out of those natives and go into an invasive, do we have an idea of what that changes in our grazing numbers?
Ms. Laniger?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Representative Harrelson. I don't have that number, but I'd be happy to look into it a bit with my colleagues and hopefully get back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for being here. Anyone else in the public? All right. We'll close public comment. Committee, what's your pleasure? Move to pass by Harrelson. Second by Sherwood. We'll work the bill. Page 1. Page 2. Page 3.
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Harrelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Page 3, line 20, I would like to strike 100 million and replace that with 40 million.
Seconded by Angelos. Discussion on the amendment?
I believe this
Go
just
ahead,
aligns,
Representative
Mr. Chairman. I just believe this aligns with the work of our body in the past in this conversation, and I believe that the grant side of this for the invasives is, in my opinion, the most important part. So I think that this gets the conversation going. We got 8 months until we can have this conversation again and look at funding more as we see that as a need.
Further discussion on the amendment? I believe, Representative Harrelson, we're going to have to deal with line 19 as well. And I think in the same amendment, if there's any corrective language for the top of page 4, there on line 2 and 3, just this would be a good time to get that into your amendment if you have any changes you wanted to make there?
Do both page 3 and 4 at the same time? I can definitely do that, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, sorry, and I assume that they would change the line 19 whenever we change line 20, but absolutely change line 19 to 40 million and 20 to 40 million. And then on page 4, lines 2 and 3, after lands, replace with a semicolon and then remove "and restoring lost public infrastructure," and slide that down to line 7, where it would read "community and county water supplies and restoring lost public infrastructure," and slide the period to the end of that sentence.
Ms. Childress, are you tracking with that? Okay, so that's gonna go there. All right, discussion on the amendment? Questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of the Harrelson amendment, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no? No. Let's see hands. All those in favor of the amendment, say aye, or raise your hands, I mean. All right, and those opposed? All right, that carries. All right, still on page 3. Page 4. Page 5. Page 6.
Mr. Chairman?
Representative Harrelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Page 6, line 21, strike $40 million, make that $30 million, and then strike the 40 and put 30 in there, and realign that section with the actions of the body.
Okay. I think we did the same thing to Senate File 152, so, all right. Do I have a second? Second by Angelos. Discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of the Harrelson amendment on page 6, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. That carries. Page 7. I don't think it hurts to leave this language, even if some of these bills have met their demise by this time. Page 8.
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Angelos?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman. Can we go back to page 6?
Absolutely.
We're going to need to adjust that number on line 12. So if we could just have our,
It's 92.
I'm sorry.
92. Mr. Chairman, we would have to adjust the 162 million to 92 million, if my math is correct.
Representative Angelos, good check. Good catch there. $92,276,466. That'll affect lines 10, 11, and 12. Are you with us there, Ms. Childress? Okay. All right. Let's see, we need a second on that. Seconded by Harrelson. All those in favor, well, any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of the Angelos amendment on page 6, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. That carries. Okay. Page 8. Page 9. Page 10. Any discussion on the bill? No? Okay, all right. Ms. Childress, please take the roll.
Roll call vote, Senate File 148 do pass as amended. Representative Allemand? No. Representative Angelos? Aye. Representative Harrelson?
Aye.
Representative Pendergraft? Aye. Representative Sherwood?
Aye.
Representative Smith?
No.
Chairman Bear?
No.
Mr. Chairman, 4 aye, 3 no.
Okay, that does pass. And Representative Larson, would you mind floor managing this bill? Thank you. Thank you. And I assume that works for you, Senator? Yep, you bet. All right, committee, we're going to wrap up at no later than 9:30, but we do have a re-referral, Senate File 175. If you'll pull that out, please. Looks like is there anybody in the room for Senate File 175? Okay. All right. We're gonna have to do this on our own, folks.
Okay, no.
I'm on this bill. Oh, my goodness. Guess it's me. All right. So we have a $18,000 appropriation here to administer this. We're changing some, the intent of the bill was to reduce the number of days, and you can see that on page 2, line 10. You can see the first change, this is for unemployment benefits, 20 times his weekly benefit, or 30% of the wages payable for insured work in his base period. We changed the word unemployment there on page 2, line 20, from unemployment to reemployment. Same thing on page 3. Thought we were changing the dates on this. I guess it just changes the maximum amount of benefits, which is same as changing the time.
On page 3, top of page 3.
Yeah, I don't think there's any changes there. That's all language that's already in the books.
Mr. Chairman, this is the bill we got an email about this morning, is that correct?
I haven't seen the email.
I guess my question was the fund that this comes from. Seems like it was mentioned in that email was almost 400 million.
Well, this, if you look at the, if you look at line 19 on page 3, it's coming from the general fund rather than the unemployment fund. So the reason that is because the administration of the Department of Workforce Services is paid for out of general funds. The funds that would be affected by the change in percentages is that fund that is very healthy. So this is more about getting people back into the workforce. It's what the bill is purposed for. Of course, we're the second committee on this. This was already handled by another committee, so we're just dealing with the appropriation. But we can adjust things that have to do with appropriations. So with that, is there any comments on the bill? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and take the roll call. Well, let's have a motion first. Do we have a motion on move to pass by Pendergraph, seconded by Alman?
Just one question real quick, Mr. Chairman.
Please, Representative
So just so we're seeing a yearly expenditure of 18,000, but it looks to be one-time general funds, but this would be something that would be ongoing, correct? But
Yeah,
I see 0 under 27, which is my question.
Yeah, my understanding is the 18,000 is just to get it up and going, and the personnel work and whatnot, it's just a change in policy. So there won't be any additional anticipated change. I'm not even sure that the 18,000 is completely necessary, but I haven't heard testimony on that, so.
Okay, so, Mr. Chairman, so it would be a one-time expenditure of 18,000 in the fiscal year 2026 to basically create the program that would focus more on reemployment as well as just that 20 times weekly benefit conversation. So we are kind of lowering that down, but yet giving opportunity for reemployment to be incentivized.
Yeah,
Am I
and
clear?
my understanding is, let me be a little clearer about this, the page 2, line 10, that the multiplier is, it affects the period, the length of time you would receive benefits, and that's why there's a multiplier. So you're going from 26 weeks to 20 weeks of benefits. That's the intent of the bill. Representative Sherwood. Thought we might hear from you.
What Wyoming problem are we trying to solve with this bill?
Great question, Representative Sherwood. The issue is our unemployment, the lack of workforce. And so getting people back into the workforce is the problem that we're trying to solve with this. Follow up?
Mr. Chairman, I heard testimony on this bill last year in front of this committee.
Please share with us.
I think that, I'm trying to think of the nicest way to say this.
Representative Sherwood, you just say it the way you feel. We'll be happy to hear it.
I think that this bill, as it is amended, reducing the 26 weeks to 20 is based on an opinion and does not align with the workforce data that we have. We have one of the most successful workforce programs in the nation, and that account is fiscally more stable than any other state. So I think that this bill is seeking out a solution to a problem that does not exist. And I'm hesitant, I'm very hesitant to support it, especially without the bringer, the lead sponsor in the room. I just don't think it's necessary at this time.
Okay, appreciate your comments. Any further comments on the bill? I know I'm playing two roles here, presenting the bill and commenting, but I am gonna, since it's simply a re-referral, I'm gonna go ahead and comment. The good Representative Sherwood is absolutely correct. We are not even collecting premiums right now because the account is in good shape. So I don't think this is a fiscal, the bill wasn't really brought for fiscal reasons as much as it was for motivational reasons to get people back into the workforce. So just want to make sure that that's what everybody understands is what the purpose of the bill is to do. And it's perfectly fine to have ideological disagreements on whether that's a correct direction to go. Okay. Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I may briefly opine on what I have seen. We ran a business I was involved for 17 years, and during that time, because construction is what it is, at times we would lay people off, and they'd be off for various times. As long as those funds were coming, there was no motivation. Why should I go back to work? And I just think.
Okay, Representative Sherwood.
All right, I'm going to throw out a different scenario. I don't know how many of you guys know, but I work with 300 locally owned businesses in my day job. Most of those are 1, 2, 3 people, small, right? So there's not like a dedicated HR person. So the reverse side of the scenario is when people are actively looking for work and they may be applying to these smaller companies, it takes, unfortunately, a lot more time than it should, that we would like, to go through that hiring process, right? So if you're the owner and you're short-staffed, that means that you're doing the job of owning the business, managing the business, maybe you're jumping in and doing the floor POS, right? It's really hard to carve out time to then put out the job description, get in the resumes, sort through the resumes, set up the interviews, and actually hire somebody. So the way that I'm viewing this is that 26 weeks isn't, because somebody wants 26 weeks of vacation, but that the jobs that they're applying for, it may take an inordinate amount of time to set up that interview and actually get the job.
Okay. Further comments on the bill? Good debate. I'd love to keep going with you there, Representative Sherwood, on the debate. Rather than beat this bill up this morning, I think we'll go ahead and move on unless there's any further comments. Representative Pendergraft, did you want to?
I'll let it go.
Okay, all right. You're good? Okay, question on the bill?
We actually have, did we get a motion?
Oh,
You did.
all right.
I'm the one that's gonna ask dumb questions.
Well, I can get lost too. I don't mind the questions. Ms. Childress, please call the roll.
Roll call vote, Senate File 175, do pass. Representative Alaman?
Aye.
Representative Angelos? Aye. Representative Haroldson?
Aye.
Representative Pendergraft?
Aye.
Representative Sherwood?
No.
Representative Smith?
Aye.
Chairman Bear?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, 6 aye, 1 no.
All right, thank you. So before I adjourn, a couple of you weren't here, Representative Sherwood and Vice Chair Pendergraft. We had a conversation about this email. And what we decided was we're going to have to do an AM, we'll have 2 meetings on Monday. One will be an AM meeting for this purpose, meeting with agencies, and then we'll have our noon meeting, which will be interim topics. And I'm going to task, on the interim topics issue, I'm going to task both Angelos and Haroldson. I know you're probably, if you get too busy, Angelos will probably have to carry the weight of this. We need to have a conversation with Chairman Winter in Ag and discuss with Fire Marshal, or not Fire Marshal, but Forester Norris. I would like to have her come in on one of those first meetings, and we may want the Ag Committee to come and join us for that, because it's not in our, it's not our decision as to what interim topics. There's a final decision being made by the Management Council. Ms. Childress.
Mr. Chairman, State Forester will not be available until Wednesday.
Okay, so there's one day, so it'd have to be Wednesday, which is a noon meeting.
Yes.
Correct? Could you look at the House Ag Committee? And now we're just the House side on this, and I have invited the Senate, but I've gotten no response from them. Also, if we take it up as an interim topic, they will have to be involved with approving the state forestry thing. So if I could get you, Representative Angelos, and you, Representative Haroldson, to make sure we've got a backup plan for the interim, if we don't get it, that Ag gets that. I will tell you that I think there's a preference that this committee handles that. So let's just make sure we got a lot of horses in the race, if you will.
Mr. Chairman, when you say a backup plan, it may be off record, we should have that conversation, but I just want to, we'll talk a little bit more, I guess, offline on
Yeah,
that.
it's just there was discussion on the floor about this should be an Ag. I don't necessarily disagree, but I've made commitments to a lot of people that we will make sure that this gets taken care of this summer. And I think it's an important enough issue on the funding side that this committee should be pretty interested in getting it done. But I just want to make sure we've got all parties on board with that. I don't even know what Ag is looking at. We don't have a lot of subject matter that we could be working on, so I'm happy to make this a focus, but we do have our counterparts in the Senate too that would need to come along to make it effective, so. And let's see, there's 2 of us on Management Council, so we might have a little bit of sway there too. Okay. Yeah, you have one in your folder. You sure do. And so we're going to cover all of the agencies that are on this list. Oh, we just excluded you. Here, I can have that one.
I just wanted to see which email.
And so we'll invite all those. We'll have Forrester on Wednesday, and we'll try to get the other 2 on Monday morning and Tuesday morning. No, Monday at noon, I'm sorry, right? No, Monday morning, because we've got the interim topics at noon, all right? So we'll have 2 meetings on Monday, no meeting on Thursday. Representative Haroldson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just as a clarifier to our 2 good members that weren't here earlier, we had a discussion on this list, and we decided as a part of the body of this committee to have a discussion with Department of Health the University of Wyoming and community colleges together, and then State Forester is our three that we're gonna have a discussion with.
Yeah, it's for sure. It's
And
all of
we've
those
got-
on the list, everybody on the list. We got Department of Corrections as well.
Yes, that's
Okay.
just what I was going to say. You did add Department of Corrections as
And
well.
are we gonna double that up on a day as well?
Yeah, well, we've got 3 meetings, Monday morning, Tuesday morning, Wednesday noon.
Yeah, and we got 4
So-
slots.
Do you
So-
want to see how I kind of mapped it out? And we'll
Please.
see if those directors
Please.
are available. So I was thinking Monday from 8 to 9, Department of Health, 9 to 10, Corrections. So Monday morning, you would have Health and Corrections. Then on Tuesday, invite UW and the community colleges from 8 to 10. And then Wednesday, upon noon recess, meet with the Forester.
I like that.
Okay.
Brilliant work there.
Thank you. So just one meeting on Monday.
Well, there's the second meeting will be at noon recess, and that'll be our interim topics. And hopefully the Forester will be here then too, but that'll be just a minimal conversation compared to what we get into on Wednesday. I think the biggest question will be, do they anticipate exception requests? If you guys have questions about what their base budget is on each of these agencies, and just, let's get the discussion started now while we're here in town. And I did talk to, I've got to go here in a second, but I did talk to our education finance staff. We probably won't have a real clear understanding of what was in the decision that came out yesterday from the courts until Management Council meets to finalize the interim topics. So about that time, we might get a briefing, so just stand by for that. I'm gonna go get a briefing, and if my vice chair can join me, we'll get a briefing right now as to how that decision might affect 2 things: our ECA in this session, and K-12 capital construction. So we'll, and if you didn't see yesterday, House Bill 259 was amended. Campbell County High School was removed, but then they put in the finances that were necessary to keep that moving as far as plan and design.
In the garage too, right?
The garage was completely funded. The bus barn was completely funded, okay?
What about my veterans?
That's today at noon, so I'll be presenting that, and look out. Senate seems to be in a cutting mood
You
today.
sure that you don't have something else to do, and I'll go in and sit for you?
I'd appreciate your assistance. What?
We're still live.
I couldn't understand. We're live. Yeah. Yep, I wanted all that there. Okay, so with that, we're adjourned.